I bought this wrecked 2020 CBR650R from the auction, put it back together, had it inspected, and now it's roadworthy and back on the street. One of the biggest questions I get about wrecked bikes is, how much did it cost? And how much do I have into the bike? And also, does it even make sense to buy a wrecked bike versus just buying it used or buying it new? So let's break that down and see if it actually makes sense. Buying the bike from the auction, I put in a final bid of $3,000, and after those fees, which you have to pay, I know, it's a lot, I would spend another $1,100 with a total of $4,132. To get the bike home and try to save some money, I rented a U-Haul and went to the auction lot myself to take delivery. That cost $44, a few hours of my time. I learned tricks of the trade, also got a chance to see all this in person for a total of $4,176 to get this bike home. The starting amount for the CBR is $4,176. That's before I did any work to it. This is just to get it home. And this is before I knew how much damage the bike really had. But once I did my inspection, I would start taking broken parts off and start ordering replacement parts. And I would get most of these parts from eBay and Babbitt's. Starting in the front of the bike, the clip-ons were damaged beyond repair. A new set cost $88. That's not too bad. These will be super easy to install. I also purchased a new left grip, as the previous one, it was stuck on the broken clip-on. Clutch cable lines, the perch, the pressure switch, bearing weight, all of that was okay, and I reused those pieces. There was also a slight concern about the clutch lever, but come to find out, it's just cheap. A new set is $35, so I decided to keep these, roll with them on the bike. They worked fine. It wasn't worth replacing. When motorcycles are wrecked, two of the biggest concerns are the frame and the engine. In this case of the engine, there was some oil on one of the spark plugs, which was a concern to me. The bike only had 11,000 miles, so I immediately thought, okay, maybe the valve seals are leaking, right? But after further thought, more than likely with the bike being wrecked and it's sitting on its side, some of that oil probably passed the seals at that point. But I wanted to wait until I got the bike started before I decided changing out engine components, because if the bike was gonna run funny, it would do that and start misfiring after I got it started. So worst case, I had oil on the spark plugs and I would have to change them out. But best case, I didn't have to change them out at all. But the frame, that's another situation. But luckily on this bike, the only thing that I had to deal with was the headlight bracket. It was bent, but as far as the suspension and the handling of the bike, the frame is true. It rides straight. There's no heaviness in the steering to left or right. It rides great. With the airbox off, I cleaned the debris that I found, changed out the air filter, which cost $17, slapped it all back together, bike fired up no problem. Another minor detail to replace was the rear brake pedal. From the accident, it was damaged, but good news, the rear set was undamaged. Had a few scrapes on it, but not worth replacing. After removing it, I damaged the spring stop switch. That was all on me, was trying not to do it, but I did it anyway. But I replaced that for $3 and replaced the brake pedal for $30. One of the more time-consuming things that I dealt with on the bike involved the ignition system. So when I got the bike, it didn't have a key. So I took the rear lock off and tried to have a key made off of the patent in the lock system. I took that to 4 different locksmiths and nobody could make a key off of it. So I went to the Honda dealership. They couldn't make me a key either. Called Honda America. They don't have the key codes either. So I learned about the entire key ignition system on this bike, and long story short, I ended up having to spend $206 on a new ignition, a gas cap, and a rear lock. Luckily that comes as a set, but I was prepared to spend $200 on that. But now I have a new ignition, a gas cap, and a lock set that came with 2 keys, the new key code. If those keys are lost, I can have a key made off of that, matched to the VIN number, and we got the bike started. Moving to the rear of the bike, most of the damage involved the under panel and the tail light, but the good news is all of the sensitive components, the wiring, the battery, the rectifier, all of that was unharmed. This turned out to be not as much of a bad news situation, but this under panel, it was damaged. I ripped that out, replaced it for 20 bucks, brand new. I was actually surprised that this piece was pretty inexpensive, because sometimes, man, something like this might be 100 bucks. Bonus points was saving money by reusing the bushings on the old piece. I also found a used tail light on eBay for $47 with integrated turn signals. I soldered the wires together using the signals on the bent tail bracket, and it looked OEM. Worked out beautifully. As for the license plate, I was at a crossroads. I could have bent this one to make it look decent, but I ended up making one using my Bamboo A1 printer.
This would cost me less than $3 in material, but more in time to make and design it. But it's a reusable design, so I don't factor that in.
Once I got the bike on the street and I found that it was safe to ride, that's when I started to deal with the look of the bike, and that involved the fairings. So you have two bikes. You got the CBR and you got the CB. Both are 650s, but the CB does not have the fairings. Now, I could have left the bike naked and ran it that way, but the title says CBR650R, so I wanted to put the fairings back on it. So sourced off the eBay, got the eBay special, and got a new set of fairings.
Rather than spend money to have Honda on the side of the fairings and buy them individually, I found a set on eBay for $398 shipped to the door. Only downside, they shipped a clear visor instead of my tinted one. I could have argued about it, but it ain't that big of a deal. But it all went back together semi-smoothly besides a few fitment issues. I also had the option of buying a passenger seat. I couldn't find one for a decent price, so I found a rear passenger cover that was close in color for $64. It's a little off, I'm not gonna lie to you, but who looking that close?
Yeah.
With the fairings on, I would have a few pieces left over as replacements. So for $398, I don't think it was too bad of a deal. eBay special, it worked out this time.
There were a few things that I budgeted out for the bike, but I decided to not do, and that was the radiator fluid, the oil, and the brake fluid. So for the brake fluid, I got lucky that I didn't actually introduce any air into the braking system, so I didn't have to do anything with that. So I checked the fluid, it looked fine, it didn't look like it was discolored, left it alone. But the oil, we checked the oil, bike's good on oil, and the previous owner actually reached out to me, and he said that he thinks that he had the oil changed at around 10,000 miles. And so rather than change it now at 11,000, might as well leave it till 12.5. But he also told me that he had the spare key still to the bike. But at this point, what am I gonna do with a spare key and I have a new ignition system and a gas cap and a rear lock? It wouldn't match anymore. But he also sent me the picture of the bike when it was wrecked, which I thought was really interesting. But he asked about the bike, you know, the frame and if the bike rode straight and everything, because he recognized it based off of my Facebook Marketplace ad because I'm selling the bike. So it was a pretty cool conversation, but yeah, ultimately I decided to not do those things, and I think it'll be fine.
After getting the bike started, I would cycle it on and off a few times, watch the operating temperature to see where it would end up, and kind of find out there wouldn't be an immediate need to do that, so I left it alone. There was also the thought of putting on a new chain for around $120, but worst case scenario, you just clean it. But I decided against replacing it. Everything so far on this bike, it rides as it should, but there's room for improvement if necessary. The key word being, if necessary. The cost besides working on the bike, I would spend $505 to have the bike inspected, to get a fully rebuilt title so I can legally ride the bike on the street with a tag, and also get full insurance coverage. If you didn't know, on a rebuilt bike, you can do that. But if you factor in the gas to make this trip and maybe some wear and tear on my truck, that would be another $45.
In total, I would spend right at $5,624 to get this bike in this form back on the street, not only safely and also legally. So if you add in a buffer of around $250, that brings that up to around $5,875. Brand new CBR650Rs go for around $10,000 before taxes, title, and any dock fees or any miscellaneous things that dealerships are going to do. And also on the used market, they're going for around $7,000.
So the original question, does it make sense to rebuild this bike given the cost of it and what I have in it? I would say absolutely it makes sense. Look at this thing.
It's not always about the money when I rebuild these bikes. I'm also looking to learn from these bikes, and I can apply the knowledge from the CBR and apply it to other bikes in a similar platform, or taking some of that knowledge and applying it to the other bikes. But the bike is for sale. I'm hoping that I can make maybe a couple $100, hopefully 500 off of it, and then apply that money to the other rebuilds that I'm working on as well. But there's two things that's holding this bike back. The market demand is right now a buyer's market, which means that prices are really low. And what makes it even more challenging is the fact that it has a rebuilt title. And a lot of people just simply don't like rebuilt titles or trust them. All in, $5,624 plus or minus $100. I would totally rebuild this bike again. Let me know what you think down below. Did I overdo it or could I have done better? I don't think there was much waste on this bike where I bought material and, you know, I had to keep buying things over and over because something wouldn't fit. So yeah, I think the CBR was a success. But as always, I hope you learned something. I hope this clears the air a little bit about rebuilt bikes. They are fantastic opportunities. They do require work. Some of them a lot more than others. And it's just a matter of you taking the risk and jumping out there and seeing if you can do it. But I've done it multiple times and I don't plan on stopping. But you can click right here and check out the full playlist on rebuilding this bike. I think it's a good time. I think it's very thorough, and I'd love to know what you guys think. But yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Peace.